The blue light of hyperspace faded as the human ship Harmony dropped back into normal space. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood at the main window, watching the massive alien fleet spread across the starfield like a metal forest. She had seen many things in her 42 years, but nothing quite like this. The Galactic Empire's first fleet was waiting for them. Hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The biggest ship sat in the center like a metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports and shield generators that glowed with purple energy. "Impressive," said Ryan Clark, stepping up beside her. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm eyes that missed nothing. The aliens thought he was a cultural specialist. They were wrong about that, just like they were wrong about many things. Lisa nodded slowly. The Empire had been very clear about this meeting. Earth had sent a message asking to join their galactic community. The Empire had agreed to hear their request, but only because they found human attempts at diplomacy amusing. They expected another primitive species begging for protection. Emma Foster was checking her datapad near the communication station. She looked young, maybe 30, with bright eyes and an eager smile, the perfect image of an enthusiastic cultural attaché. She glanced up at Lisa and gave a small nod. Everything was ready. Jacob Brown sat at the negotiation table reviewing trade documents that would never be used. He was a solid man in his 50s, the kind of person who looked like he had spent his life in boardrooms and conference halls. His hands were steady as he arranged his papers, but Lisa noticed the small scars on his knuckles. Nina Davis stood near the security station, supposedly their protection advisor. She was small and quiet, the kind of person others might overlook. That was usually their last mistake. Nina had been watching the alien fleet through their sensors, making mental notes about ship positions and weapon configurations. "Incoming transmission," announced their ship's computer in its neutral voice. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien flagship. The being that appeared was tall and thin, with crystalline skin that reflected light and rainbow patterns. This was Admiral Kexran of the Zephyrian Empire, one of the most powerful military commanders in known space. "Human vessel," the alien said in perfect English. His voice was cold and mechanical, translated by computers that had learned their language from intercepted broadcasts. "You will approach the Dominion's Pride and dock at Bay 7. Your delegation will be escorted to the council chamber." Lisa stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. "Admiral Kexran, we are honored by your invitation. Ambassador Lisa Martinez and the Earth delegation are ready to begin peaceful negotiations." The alien's large eyes studied her for a moment. Lisa could see the dismissal there, the same look a lion might give to a mouse. "Peaceful," he repeated as if the word was foreign to him. "Yes, humans are known for their peaceful nature. We have reviewed your cultural transmissions. Very entertaining." The transmission ended abruptly. Lisa turned to her team, her expression unchanged. To any observer, she looked like a nervous diplomat preparing for the most important meeting of her career. In reality, she was a predator studying her prey. "Final systems check," she said quietly. Emma touched her datapad. Hidden scanning systems throughout their ship began recording everything about the alien fleet. Ship designs, weapon types, shield frequencies, communication patterns, information that would be very valuable soon. Jacob sealed his trade documents in a diplomatic pouch. Inside, mixed with boring economic reports, were detailed military assessments and tactical recommendations. The Empire would never think to search such dull paperwork. Nina checked her sidearm, a small pistol that looked standard for diplomatic protection. It was actually a highly advanced weapon that could punch through most known armor types, not that she would need it. Nina was far more dangerous without any weapon at all. Ryan gathered his cultural analysis reports. Each page looked like harmless academic research about human society and art. In reality, they contained psychological profiles of alien species and detailed studies of imperial military doctrine. The Harmony moved slowly toward the massive alien flagship. Through the windows, they could see the true size of the Empire's power. Gun batteries that could destroy cities, shield generators that could stop entire fleets, armor plating thick enough to survive nuclear weapons. The Empire had conquered 847 star systems using ships like these. They had crushed every species that opposed them and enslaved those that surrendered. Their military might was legendary across the galaxy. They had never lost a major battle, but they had never fought humans. Docking complete, announced the computer. Lisa straightened her diplomatic jacket and checked her appearance one last time. She needed to look like exactly what the aliens expected. A soft, peaceful negotiator from a weak species that had never known real war. It was not a difficult act. Humans had been pretending to be harmless for thousands of years. The airlock cycled open, and alien soldiers entered their ship. They were Vextar, the Empire's warrior caste, 7 feet tall with forearms and chitinous armor that grew from their own bodies. Their weapons were energy rifles that could melt through steel. "You will follow," commanded their leader in broken English. His voice clicked and buzzed like an angry insect. Lisa smiled warmly, the perfect diplomatic expression. "Of course. We are grateful for this opportunity to meet with the Council." The human delegation gathered their materials and followed the alien soldiers. As they walked through the corridors of the Harmony, Lisa noticed how the Vextar relaxed around them. 5 soft humans and their basic equipment posed no threat to elite Imperial warriors. The aliens were right, of course. 5 diplomats with data pads and trade documents were harmless. Good thing there were no diplomats on this mission. The shuttle ride to the Dominion's Pride took 20 minutes. Lisa spent the time memorizing the positions of the other ships in the fleet, noting their patrol patterns and formation structure. Beside her, Nina was doing the same thing, her eyes tracking the movement of escort fighters and defense platforms. Jacob appeared to be reviewing his trade proposals, but he was actually studying the energy readings from the alien ships. Emma looked excited and nervous, like a young academic about to meet her heroes. Ryan seemed lost in thought, probably composing cultural observations. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Through the small windows, they could see the interior of the alien flagship. It was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up into darkness and corridors wide enough for entire armies to march through. "Your new home," said one of the Vextar soldiers, with what might have been amusement. Lisa thanked him politely and gathered her diplomatic bag. Inside, along with her negotiation materials, was a small device that would soon change everything. But that was for later. Right now, she had a role to play. The great game was about to begin. The corridors of the Dominion's Pride stretched endlessly in all directions. Lisa Martinez walked between her alien escorts, her diplomatic heels clicking softly on the metal floor. The sound echoed in the vast space, making her feel small and insignificant. That was exactly what the Empire wanted. The walls were covered with trophies from conquered worlds. Weapons from defeated armies hung in display cases. Flags from destroyed civilizations decorated the hallways like colorful grave markers. Each trophy told a story of surrender, defeat, and the crushing power of the Galactic Empire. "Impressive collection," Emma Foster said to their Vextar escort, her voice full of innocent curiosity. She pointed to a twisted piece of metal that might once have been a sword. "What world did this come from?" The insect warrior clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement. "The Corvani resistance. They thought their steel could stop plasma weapons. They learned otherwise." Emma nodded and made notes on her data pad, playing the role of an eager cultural researcher. She was actually recording the layout of the ship's interior, marking guard positions and security checkpoints. The Empire's arrogance made them careless about what information they shared. Ryan Clark walked beside her, his eyes studying the alien architecture. To the guards, he looked like an academic fascinated by Imperial design. In reality, he was memorizing structural weak points and calculating blast patterns. The Empire built their ships to intimidate, not to survive determined assault. Jacob Brown appeared interested in the economic implications of the trophy collection. He asked questions about trade routes and resource extraction from conquered systems. The aliens answered freely, proud of their efficient exploitation methods. They had no idea they were giving away strategic intelligence about supply lines and administrative centers. Nina Davis stayed quiet, walking at the back of the group like a proper security escort. Her small size and civilian clothes made her seem harmless to the towering Vextar warriors. She used their dismissal to study their movement patterns, weapon placement, and communication protocols. The Empire's soldiers were well trained but predictable. They passed through several security checkpoints without incident. The alien scanners found nothing threatening about diplomatic data pads, trade documents, and cultural research materials. The Empire's technology was advanced, but they were looking for conventional weapons and standard military equipment. They found neither. The council chamber was a massive hall that could hold thousands. The ceiling disappeared into shadows and the walls curved away into darkness. At the center sat a raised platform where the Empire's leaders waited on thrones that gleamed like black metal. Admiral Kexron was there, his crystalline skin reflecting the room's harsh lighting. Beside him sat General Vorthok, the supreme commander of the Vextar military forces. His forearms ended in natural weapons that could tear through armor plating. Around them stood lesser officials from dozens of conquered species, all wearing the collar marks of imperial service. The human delegation announced their escort in the buzzing Vexitar language. Lisa stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Honored leaders of the Galactic Empire, I am Ambassador Lisa Martinez, representing the people of Earth and our colonies. We come seeking peaceful integration into your galactic community. Admiral Kexran leaned forward on his throne, his large eyes studying the humans like specimens in a laboratory. Peaceful integration, he repeated slowly. Tell us, Ambassador Martinez, what can your primitive species offer the Empire? Lisa maintained her diplomatic smile despite the insult. This was expected. The Empire needed to feel superior before negotiations could begin. Earth offers abundant agricultural resources, unique artistic traditions, and scientific knowledge that might complement imperial research. General Vorthok made a sound that might have been laughter. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke. Agriculture and art. How quaint. We have strip-mined entire worlds for resources more valuable than anything your dirt farmers could grow. The other imperial officials joined in the mocking laughter. This was a familiar scene for them. Another weak species presenting pathetic offerings in exchange for the privilege of serving their betters. Emma stepped forward with her data pad, her young face bright with enthusiasm. If I may, General Vorthok, I would love to learn more about imperial military history. Your conquest of the Andorian Federation was particularly brilliant from a strategic perspective. The general's ego was immediately engaged. For the next hour, he described in detail how imperial forces had crushed the Andorian resistance. He explained their battle formations, logistic systems, and command structure with the pride of a master craftsman showing off his tools. Emma nodded and took careful notes, occasionally asking innocent questions about troop numbers, supply requirements, and communication protocols. The general answered everything, pleased to have such an attentive audience for his military genius. Ryan joined the conversation, asking about cultural integration policies on conquered worlds. He wanted to understand how the Empire managed so many different species across such vast distances. Admiral Kexran was happy to explain their efficient methods of breaking local traditions and imposing imperial culture. Jacob inquired about economic systems, trade regulations, and resource distribution networks. The aliens saw no harm in discussing their administrative methods with a primitive trader who would never be in a position to use such information. Nina remained silent, but her eyes never stopped moving. She cataloged every guard position, every weapon emplacement, every security camera. The council chamber was heavily defended, but the defenses were designed to stop armies, not individuals who knew exactly where to strike. As the hours passed, the imperial leaders grew more relaxed and talkative. These humans were clearly harmless academics and bureaucrats. Their questions were naive and their offers pathetic. This would be another easy conquest for the Empire's growing collection. Your species shows promise as agricultural workers, Admiral Kexran finally said, his tone suggesting great generosity. We might find suitable work camps for your population after integration is complete. Lisa maintained her diplomatic composure, though inside she was taking careful notes of her own. Work camps, population integration. The Empire wasn't talking about peaceful cooperation. They were planning slavery. That is very generous, she replied carefully. However, humanity would prefer to maintain some degree of autonomy in our home system. General Vorthok's forearms moved in a gesture of dismissal. Autonomy is not granted to lesser species. You will accept the terms offered or face the consequences of refusal. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the chamber, Imperial guards moved closer to the human delegation. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Lisa looked at her team, her expression carefully neutral. To the watching aliens, she appeared to be considering their ultimatum with growing fear. Ryan seemed nervous, adjusting his cultural research files with shaking hands. Emma had stopped taking notes, her enthusiasm replaced by obvious worry. Jacob was staring at his trade documents as if they might provide some escape from this nightmare. Nina had stepped closer to the group, her protective instincts engaged. I need to consult with my government," Lisa said finally, her voice carefully modulated to sound defeated. "This is beyond my authority to accept." Admiral Kexeron exchanged glances with General Vorthak. The humans were breaking, just as every other species had broken when faced with Imperial might. "You have one day," the Admiral announced. "Use your primitive communication systems to contact your leaders. Tell them the Empire's patience is not infinite." The human delegation was escorted to guest quarters deep in the ship's interior. The rooms were comfortable but clearly temporary. This was where conquered ambassadors spent their final hours of freedom before their species joined the Empire's vast collection of slaves. As the door sealed behind them, Lisa Martinez allowed herself a small smile. The first phase was complete. The Empire had revealed their true nature, their capabilities, and their intentions. Now the real work could begin, but not yet. First, they needed to play their roles a little longer. The Empire expected fear, confusion, and desperate attempts at negotiation. They would get all of that and more. The Great Game was entering its second phase. The guest quarters aboard the Dominion's Pride were designed to impress and intimidate. The rooms were large enough to house a small family, with furniture carved from exotic materials taken from conquered worlds. Everything spoke of the Empire's vast wealth and power, but Lisa Martinez noticed what the aliens probably missed. The rooms were also a prison. The walls were too thick for normal construction. The windows were actually screens showing false images of space. Hidden sensors tracked every movement and recorded every conversation. The Empire wanted their guests to feel both privileged and trapped. "Beautiful accommodations," Emma Foster said loudly, examining the intricate carvings on the furniture. Her voice carried the right mix of admiration and nervousness that their watchers would expect. Ryan Clark was studying what appeared to be alien artwork on the walls. "The cultural significance of these pieces must be enormous," he commented, taking pictures with his datapad. He was actually documenting the room's layout and identifying the sensor locations. Jacob Brown spread his trade documents across the main table, muttering about exchange rates and resource values. His financial calculations were meaningless now, but they provided good cover for the small device he was assembling from components hidden in his briefcase. Nina Davis stood by the door, her hand resting on her sidearm. To the watching aliens, she looked like a nervous security officer worried about their deteriorating situation. In reality, she was listening to the corridor outside, counting guard rotations and mapping patrol patterns. Lisa sat in the center of the room, maintaining the image of a diplomat under pressure. Her team needed to appear exactly as the Empire expected: confused, frightened, and desperately seeking a way out of an impossible situation. "We need to contact Earth immediately," she said, knowing the aliens were recording every word. "The Council's demands are far beyond what we anticipated." The communication console activated with a soft chime. Admiral Kexeron's crystalline face appeared on the screen, his expression showing barely contained impatience. "Ambassador Martinez, have you reached a decision regarding the Empire's generous offer?" Lisa stood and faced the screen, her diplomatic training keeping her expression carefully neutral. "Admiral, we are prepared to open negotiations, but the timeline you've suggested is quite compressed. Perhaps we could discuss modified terms that would be acceptable to both parties." The alien's large eyes narrowed with what might have been amusement. "There are no negotiations, human. There is only acceptance or conquest. Your choice is simple: submit to Imperial rule or watch your homeworld burn." Behind her, Lisa heard Emma gasp softly at the brutal directness of the threat. It was perfectly acted, the response of a young academic suddenly faced with the reality of galactic politics. The Empire's leaders would expect nothing less from soft, peaceful humans. "I understand your position," Lisa replied carefully. "However, I must stress that humanity values its independence highly. Surely there must be some middle ground we can explore." General Vorthak appeared beside the Admiral, his four arms gesturing in obvious irritation. "Your independence is an illusion, human. We have studied your military capabilities. Your largest warships are toys compared to our escort vessels. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your technology is centuries behind our own." Lisa felt a cold anger building in her chest, but she kept it hidden behind her diplomatic mask. The general was right about human technology being different from theirs. He was very wrong about what that meant. General, surely military action would be unnecessary if we can reach an understanding, she said, letting her voice carry just the right amount of fear. The Vextar commander's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Understanding is irrelevant. We have conquered 847 star systems. Your primitive species will be number 848. Emma stepped forward, her datapad clutched in trembling hands. General, if I may ask, how does the Empire typically integrate new species into your community? This was exactly the question the aliens wanted to hear. They loved explaining their methods to defeated enemies. General Vorthek launched into a detailed description of Imperial integration policies. First came orbital bombardment of major military installations. Then systematic destruction of industrial centers and communication networks. Population centers were surrounded and starved into submission. Local governments were eliminated and replaced with imperial administrators. The surviving population was sorted by usefulness. Skilled workers were relocated to labor camps on industrial worlds. The young were taken for imperial service after proper conditioning. The old and weak were eliminated as resource drains. Within a single generation, most conquered species forgot they had ever been free. Emma nodded and took careful notes, playing the role of a horrified academic documenting the end of her civilization. Her questions seemed random and emotional, but Lisa recognized the pattern. Emma was gathering precise intelligence about imperial logistics, timing, and operational procedures. Ryan joined the conversation, asking about cultural preservation policies on conquered worlds. The aliens explained with casual cruelty how they systematically destroyed local traditions, languages, and historical records. Art was melted down for raw materials. Libraries were burned. Monuments were torn down and replaced with imperial symbols. Jacob inquired about economic integration, specifically how the Empire valued conquered resources and populations. The aliens provided detailed information about their cost-benefit analyses for different types of worlds. They treated sentient beings like any other resource to be harvested and processed. As the hours passed, Lisa noticed her team's acting becoming more subtle and sophisticated. They were no longer just playing frightened diplomats. They were becoming the characters completely, letting the aliens see exactly what they expected to see while gathering every piece of information they could. Extract. The Empire's leaders grew more confident and talkative as they sensed human despair building. They began sharing operational details that should have been classified. Fleet positions, supply schedules, command protocols, communication frequencies. They saw no harm in discussing military secrets with soon-to-be slaves. Your 24 hours are nearly complete, Admiral Kexran announced as the session finally ended. We expect your answer at tomorrow's council meeting. The screen went dark, leaving the human delegation alone in their luxurious prison. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The silence stretched until Nina finally checked her scanner and gave a small nod. The room's surveillance system had been quietly disabled by Jacob's hidden device. Phase 2 complete, Lisa said quietly, her diplomatic mask finally slipping. Intelligence gathering is finished. They've told us everything we need to know. Emma was already processing the information they had collected. Fleet composition, command structure, operational doctrine, and psychological profiles. They're arrogant, overconfident, and completely predictable. Ryan nodded grimly. Their integration methods are exactly what we expected. No negotiation, no compromise, only complete subjugation or total destruction. Jacob was studying his financial calculations, but now Lisa could see they weren't trade projections at all. They were tactical assessments and target priority lists. Supply lines are vulnerable, he reported. Command and control systems follow standard Imperial doctrine. Everything centralized through the flagship. Nina had moved to the window, studying the fleet formation through her own hidden sensors. Guard rotations are regular. Security protocols are designed for external threats, not internal ones. They're not expecting resistance from inside their own flagship. Lisa stood and walked to the center of the room, her diplomatic persona completely gone. In its place stood someone much older, much harder, and far more dangerous. Recommendations? She asked quietly. Continue the deception through tomorrow's meeting, Emma suggested. Let them think we're broken and desperate. They'll want to savor our final surrender, Ryan agreed. Their egos demand a public submission. They'll want to make an example of us for other species watching. Jacob tapped his calculations. The window opens during their ceremony tomorrow. Fleet formation will be at maximum vulnerability while they're focused on diplomatic theater. Nina checked her weapon and smiled coldly. I'll be ready. Lisa nodded slowly. The Empire thought they were dealing with primitive diplomats from a weak species. Tomorrow they would learn the difference between human diplomacy and human warfare. But tonight they still had roles to play. The aliens expected fear, desperation, and frantic attempts at communication with Earth. They would get all of that and more. The great game was entering its final phase. The morning of the final council session arrived with artificial brightness in the guest quarters. Lisa Martinez stood before the mirror, adjusting her diplomatic jacket one last time. Today required perfect performance. The Empire expected to see a broken ambassador delivering her species' surrender. They would see exactly that, right up until they didn't. Emma Foster was reviewing her cultural notes at the main table, but her hands were steady now despite the trembling act she had maintained for days. She had spent the night processing every piece of intelligence they had gathered. The Empire's weaknesses were mapped, cataloged, and prioritized. Ryan Clark sat quietly in the corner, appearing to meditate or pray. In reality, he was running through operational sequences in his mind, preparing for the moment when diplomacy would end and other skills would be needed. Jacob Brown was destroying his trade documents, feeding them one by one into the room's recycling system. The aliens would see this as the desperate act of a defeated negotiator. They wouldn't realize he was actually eliminating evidence of activities that had nothing to do with trade. Nina Davis checked her equipment one final time. Her diplomatic sidearm was properly secured, her protective gear was in place, and her emergency beacon was ready. Everything looked standard for a nervous security officer preparing for her final diplomatic mission. The door chimed, and their Vextar escorts entered. The insect warriors seemed more relaxed today, their weapons held casually rather than at ready positions. Why would they need to be alert around defeated humans who had already shown their weakness? The council awaits your final answer, announced their leader in his clicking voice. Lisa gathered her diplomatic materials with hands that shook just slightly. Of course, we are ready to address the council's generous proposals. The walk through the ship's corridors felt different this time. The trophy displays that had seemed intimidating before now looked like the possessions of bullies who had never faced real opposition. The massive scale of the architecture seemed wasteful rather than impressive, built for show rather than function. Emma walked beside their escorts, asking innocent questions about Imperial history and culture. The Vextar warriors answered freely, proud to educate another soon-to-be subject species about their glorious conquests. They had no idea she was confirming final details about command protocols and security procedures. The council chamber was fuller than before. Representatives from dozens of conquered species filled the observer galleries, brought to witness another world's submission to imperial might. Their faces showed the dead expressions of beings who had long ago stopped hoping for freedom. Admiral Kexran sat on his throne like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict everyone already knew. General Vorthak stood beside him, his forearms crossed in satisfaction. Around them, lesser imperial officials waited for the entertainment to begin. Ambassador Martinez, the admiral began, his crystalline voice echoing through the vast chamber. Have you contacted your primitive leaders? Do they understand their situation? Lisa stepped forward, her diplomatic posture perfect despite the weight of what was coming. Yes, Admiral. Earth has received our reports about the Empire's generous offer of integration. She paused, letting tension build in the chamber. The assembled aliens leaned forward, eager to hear the words they had heard from hundreds of other species. However, Lisa continued, there seems to be some confusion about the terms of that offer. General Vorthak's mandibles clicked with irritation. There is no confusion, human. Your species will submit to Imperial rule or be destroyed. Those are the only options, Lisa nodded slowly. I understand that is your perspective, General. But I'm afraid there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of this diplomatic mission. She reached into her diplomatic bag and withdrew what appeared to be a standard communication device. The alien guards tensed slightly but saw no threat in diplomatic equipment. You see, Lisa continued, Earth did send us here as representatives. That part is true. However, We were never diplomats. She pressed a button on the device, and hidden systems throughout the Dominion's pride came to life. Jacob's innocent trade calculations were actually activation codes. Emma's cultural research contained override frequencies. Ryan's academic materials held tactical coordination protocols. The lights in the council chamber flickered as the ship's systems began responding to new commands. I am Fleet Admiral Lisa Martinez, commanding the Terran Defense Force's Deep Reconnaissance Division, Lisa announced, her voice carrying new authority that made several aliens step backward. Emma stood and removed components from her datapad, revealing advanced military scanning equipment. Lieutenant Colonel Emma Foster, intelligence specialist. Ryan rose from his position, his academic posture replaced by the bearing of a professional soldier. Colonel Ryan Clark, strategic operations. Jacob abandoned his financial documents and pulled tactical assessment tools from his briefcase. Major Jacob Brown, combat engineer. Nina drew her sidearm in one smooth motion, the weapon humming with energy that made the alien guards reach for their own weapons. Captain Nina Davis, special operations. The transformation was complete in seconds. 5 nervous diplomats had become 5 military professionals, with the coordination of a unit that had trained together for years. Admiral Kexron rose from his throne, his crystalline skin shifting to angry red patterns. Impossible. Our scanners detected no military equipment, no weapon systems, no combat modifications. Lisa smiled coldly. Your scanners found exactly what we wanted them to find. You were looking for conventional weapons and standard military technology. You found neither because we don't use either. The alien guards were moving now, raising their energy rifles and shouting commands. But Nina was already in motion, her movements too fast for their targeting systems to track. Her first shot disabled 3 weapons before their owners could fire. Her second shot took out the chamber's main lighting system. Emergency illumination bathed the chamber in red light as chaos erupted. Emma's scanning equipment was interfacing directly with the ship's computer systems, downloading tactical data and planting viral programs that would spread through the Imperial fleet's networks. Jacob's engineering tools were revealed to be sophisticated sabotage devices. Critical systems throughout the massive flagship began experiencing cascade failures as his programs rewrote their control codes. Ryan was coordinating their actions through a communication network that the Empire's sensors couldn't detect because it operated on quantum frequencies their technology couldn't access. But it was Lisa who held the chamber's attention. She stood in the center of the chaos, completely calm, watching Admiral Kexron's expressions change from anger to confusion to the first hints of fear. You asked what humanity could offer the Empire, she said, her voice carrying clearly over the alarms and shouting. We offered you the chance to discover what we learned fighting each other for 10,000 years. The Admiral backed away from her, his confidence cracking. This is impossible. You are a primitive species. Your military capabilities are centuries behind ours. You're right, Lisa agreed. We are centuries behind you in building bigger ships and more powerful weapons. But we are centuries ahead of you in learning how to kill things that are bigger and more powerful than we are. The ship shuddered as explosions began echoing through the corridors. Jacob's sabotage programs were spreading faster than the Empire's technicians could contain them. Surrender now, General Vorthak commanded, his 4 arms aiming weapons at the human team. You cannot escape the ship alive. Nina appeared behind him like a shadow, her movement so sudden that his weapons were disabled before he could react. We're not trying to escape, she said quietly. Lisa activated her communication device again, and new systems came online throughout the fleet. The Empire's sensors, which had detected only a single small human vessel, began registering massive energy signatures appearing throughout the star system. Admiral Kexron stared at the tactical displays in growing horror. What have you done? Lisa smiled, and for the first time since arriving, she let the Empire see exactly who they were really dealing with. We've shown you the difference between human diplomacy and human warfare, she said. The diplomacy is over. The Dominion's pride shook as explosions rippled through its massive hull. Admiral Kexron stared at his tactical displays, his crystalline skin shifting through colors of confusion and growing panic. The readings made no sense. Human ships were appearing throughout the star system, materializing from empty space like ghosts becoming solid. Stealth technology, Emma Foster explained calmly, her intelligence equipment now openly interfacing with the Imperial flagship's main computer. Your sensors are very good at detecting large objects with active engines and weapons. They're not so good at finding ships that don't want to be found. The main display showed dozens of vessels decloaking around the Imperial fleet. These were not the small, primitive ships the Empire had expected from humanity's earlier transmissions. These were warships built for one purpose: killing things much larger than themselves. General Vorthak was clutching his disabled weapons, his forearms trembling with rage and disbelief. "This is impossible. We monitored your home system for months. We saw your entire military capability. A few patrol ships and orbital defense platforms." Ryan Clark laughed, a sound that held no warmth. "You saw what we wanted you to see. Did you really think a species would broadcast its real military strength to potential enemies? Every transmission you intercepted was carefully crafted to make us appear weak and harmless." The ship shuddered again as more of Jacob's sabotage programs activated. Life support systems were failing on multiple decks. Weapon systems were locking onto each other instead of external targets. The mighty flagship was eating itself from the inside. Our agricultural transmissions were actually reconnaissance data, Lisa Martinez continued, her diplomatic mask completely gone. Our artistic broadcasts were psychological warfare studies. Our scientific research was military intelligence gathering. You've been under observation for 2 years. Admiral Kexran backed away from the human team, his confidence crumbling as quickly as his ship's systems. "You cannot hope to defeat the Empire. We have thousands of ships across hundreds of systems. This fleet is merely a fraction of our military might." Nina Davis moved through the chamber like a predator among prey, systematically disabling alien guards who were too stunned by the revelations to mount effective resistance. "Quantity has a quality all its own," she agreed, "but only if you can bring it to bear where it's needed." The main tactical display updated, showing new contacts appearing throughout Imperial space. Human strike forces were materializing near key installations, supply depots, and communication relays across dozens of systems. The Empire's vast military machine was being attacked simultaneously at every critical point. "Impossible," whispered one of the lesser Imperial officials. "No species has ever coordinated attacks across such distances. The logistics alone—" Emma looked up from her hacking activities, her young face wearing an expression that would have been terrifying on someone twice her age. "You're thinking like conquerors. We're thinking like liberators. Every species you've enslaved over the past centuries has been waiting for this moment." The truth began to dawn on Admiral Kexran's crystalline features. "The rebellion movements. The underground networks. You've been organizing them." "For years," Ryan confirmed. "Did you think we just happened to find you? Earth has been in contact with resistance groups throughout Imperial space since first learning of your existence. We've been planning this operation from the beginning." The ship's emergency lighting flickered as more systems failed. Through the chamber's massive windows, they could see the Imperial fleet in chaos. Human ships were moving through their formations like sharks among schools of fish, their weapons tearing through shields and armor that had never been penetrated before. Jacob checked his sabotage progress on a small display. "Propulsion systems offline. Weapons control compromised. Communications down. Life support failing on 17 decks. This ship is effectively dead." General Vorthak made a desperate lunge toward his fallen weapons, but Nina was there first. Her movement was so fast it seemed impossible, and suddenly the 7-foot insect warrior was on the floor, his natural armor cracked and his consciousness fading. "How?" Admiral Kexran demanded, his voice breaking with desperate confusion. "Your species was supposed to be weak, peaceful. You had no military tradition, no warrior culture." Lisa walked toward him, her steps echoing in the vast chamber. Around them, the representatives of conquered species were beginning to stir, hope replacing the dead expressions they had worn for so long. "No military tradition?" Lisa repeated incredulously. "Admiral, my species has been at war continuously for over 10,000 years. We've fought each other, our environment, extinction events, disease, famine, and every challenge the universe could throw at us. We are the most militaristic species in the galaxy." She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of the Imperial fleet. "The difference is that we learned to hide it behind diplomacy. We perfected the art of appearing harmless until the moment we choose not to be." The Admiral's legs gave out and he collapsed onto his throne. "But your cultural transmissions, your art, your literature, your philosophy, All of it spoke of peace, harmony, cooperation. Ryan stepped forward, his academic bearing replaced by the cold professionalism of a career officer. Art created by survivors of wars you can't imagine. Literature written by people who had seen their cities burned and their families killed. Philosophy developed by minds that had stared into the abyss of total destruction and decided to climb back out. We value peace because we're very good at war, Emma added, her intelligence work now complete. Every human child learns that violence is the last resort because we know exactly how final it can be. The ship groaned as critical structural supports began to fail. Through the windows they could see escape pods launching as the Imperial crew abandoned their dying flagship. The mighty Dominion's pride, symbol of Imperial power for 3 centuries, was becoming a tomb. This cannot be happening, Admiral Kexran whispered. We are the Empire. We rule 847 star systems. We have never been defeated. Lisa knelt beside his throne, her expression almost sympathetic. Admiral, you rule those systems through fear and superior technology. But what happens when you meet a species that isn't afraid and has learned to turn your own technology against you? The tactical displays updated one final time. Across the galaxy, Imperial installations were falling to coordinated strikes by human forces and freed rebel groups. Supply lines were severed. Communication networks were down. Administrative centers were in chaos. The Galactic Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, was collapsing in a matter of hours. How many of our people were involved in this operation? The Admiral asked, his voice barely audible. Emma consulted her equipment. Phase 1 involved approximately 50,000 human operatives placed throughout Imperial space over the past 2 years. Phase 2 is now activating liberation forces from 847 different species. Your former subjects are reclaiming their worlds as we speak. Nina appeared at Lisa's shoulder, her mission complete. The chamber is secure. All Imperial forces on this deck are neutralized. What are your orders, Admiral? Lisa stood and looked around the council chamber. The representatives of conquered species were staring at her with expressions of awe, hope, and desperate gratitude. They had waited decades for this moment. Signal the fleet, she commanded. Execute Phase 3. It's time to give these people their freedom back. Admiral Kexran looked up at her one last time. What will happen to us? To the Empire? Lisa considered the question seriously. That depends on you. My species learned a long time ago that revenge is expensive and forgiveness is profitable. Surrender now and we'll discuss terms. Continue fighting, and we'll finish what you started when you threatened our homeworld. The Admiral closed his large eyes and made his choice. I surrender. The Empire surrenders. The age of Imperial domination was over. The age of human-led galactic cooperation was about to begin. 3 days after the surrender of the Dominion's pride, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Lisa Martinez stood in the flagship's repaired command center, now serving as the temporary headquarters for the liberation forces. The massive view screen showed reports flowing in from across Imperial space. System after system was declaring independence from the fallen empire. Species that had been enslaved for generations were reclaiming their homeworlds. The carefully constructed edifice of Imperial rule was crumbling faster than anyone had anticipated. Emma Foster worked at the main intelligence console, coordinating with human operatives and freed resistance groups throughout the galaxy. Her young face showed the exhaustion of 3 days without sleep, but her eyes remained bright with the excitement of victory. Status report from the Andorian system, she announced. Local resistance forces have secured all Imperial installations. The planetary governor surrendered this morning. Casualty reports are minimal. Ryan Clark stood near the tactical display, monitoring the movements of human fleets throughout the galaxy. His role as cultural specialist was permanently discarded, replaced by his true position as strategic operations commander. Similar reports from 43 other systems, he added. Imperial forces are surrendering rather than fighting. Most of them seemed genuinely surprised by the speed of the collapse. Jacob Brown had set up an engineering station, where he continued coordinating the systematic shutdown of Imperial military infrastructure. His trade negotiations were forgotten as he focused on the complex task of safely disarming weapon systems across thousands of ships and installations. The weapons disable codes are working perfectly, he reported. Imperial technology is remarkably standardized. Once we cracked their core protocols, everything else followed predictably. Nina Davis remained on security duty, though the nature of her work had evolved significantly. Instead of protecting diplomats, she was now coordinating the safe surrender of Imperial forces and ensuring the protection of freed populations. Admiral Kexaran requests another meeting, she reported. He claims to have information about hidden Imperial installations that could pose ongoing threats. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. The former Imperial commander had been surprisingly cooperative since his surrender. Whether this was genuine conversion or calculated survival strategy remained to be seen, but his information had proven valuable. Bring him up, she decided. We'll hear what he has to say. Minutes later, Admiral Kexran entered the command center under guard. His crystalline skin had lost much of its luster, shifting to duller shades that seemed to reflect his fallen status, but his large eyes remained intelligent, and Lisa sensed he was still calculating ways to salvage something from the disaster. Admiral Martinez, he began formally, I have compiled a complete list of classified Imperial installations. Research facilities, weapons depots, administrative centers that do not appear on standard charts. He handed her a data crystal that glowed with internal light. Consider this my contribution to the transition process. Lisa accepted the crystal, but did not immediately plug it into their systems. Human intelligence protocols were far more careful than Imperial ones when dealing with potentially compromised data. Why offer this information? She asked directly. What do you hope to gain? The alien's skin shifted to patterns that might have indicated embarrassment or resignation. I have spent my life serving what I believed was the natural order of the galaxy. Strong species rule weak ones. Superior technology conquers inferior civilizations. It was simply the way things were. He gestured toward the tactical displays showing the ongoing liberation efforts. But your species has demonstrated that strength and weakness are not what I thought they were. Perhaps the natural order needs to be reconsidered. Emma looked up from her intelligence work. You're talking about fundamental changes to how galactic civilization operates. That's not something that happens overnight. No, Kexaran agreed. But it is something that happens. I have reviewed your historical databases since my capture. Humanity has experience with these transitions. Your species has rebuilt civilizations after total wars before. Ryan stepped forward, his strategic mind already working on the long-term implications. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? The alien's skin brightened slightly, showing more animation than he had displayed since his surrender. A new galactic order, not based on conquest and domination, but on cooperation and mutual benefit. The Empire had the infrastructure to connect hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. That network could serve a very different purpose under proper leadership. Lisa studied him carefully. The proposal was logical, even appealing, but she had spent too many years in intelligence work to trust convenient solutions offered by former enemies. The infrastructure exists, she acknowledged, but the institutional knowledge to operate it is contained in the minds of Imperial administrators and military officers, most of whom probably don't share your sudden conversion to cooperative governance. Jacob looked up from his engineering console. The technical systems are sound. Imperial technology is robust and well-designed, even if their political system was poisonous. We could adapt their networks for peaceful purposes. The question is whether we should, Nina said quietly. Humanity didn't fight this war to become the new empire. We fought it to free enslaved populations and protect our own people. Emma was accessing historical databases, cross-referencing patterns from previous galactic upheavals. There is precedent for this kind of transition. The Corvani Federation, before the Empire conquered them, managed a loose alliance of over 100 species for nearly a millennium. Until they met the Empire, Ryan pointed out grimly. Peaceful federations have a poor track record against militaristic neighbors. Admiral Kexran's skin patterns shifted to what Lisa recognized as urgency. That is exactly why this opportunity must not be wasted. The Empire's military structure is broken, but its weapons and technology remain. If that power falls into the wrong hands, or if multiple species begin fighting over Imperial territory, the result could be chaos on an unprecedented scale. The argument was compelling, and Lisa found herself considering possibilities she had not anticipated when this mission began. They had planned to defeat the Empire and liberate its victims. They had not planned to inherit responsibility for governing half the galaxy. What role do you see for yourself in this new order? She asked the alien admiral. His skin brightened further, showing what might have been hope. Whatever role you deem appropriate. I have administrative experience and knowledge of Imperial systems. If I can help prevent the chaos that might otherwise follow the Empire's collapse, I am willing to serve. Emma was pulling up demographic and economic data on her displays. The numbers are staggering. 47 star systems, thousands of inhabited worlds, hundreds of different species. The logistics of managing that much territory and that many populations is beyond any single species to handle alone, Lisa finished. Even humanity. Nina moved to the main display, studying the galactic map that showed the scope of the former empire. So we're not talking about human rule replacing imperial rule. We're talking about some kind of cooperative government. A federation, Ryan suggested, with each species maintaining autonomy over their own territory, while participating in shared governance of common concerns. Jacob nodded slowly. The technical infrastructure could support that kind of distributed authority. Communication networks, transportation systems, trade routes, all of it could serve cooperation instead of domination. Lisa walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were experiencing freedom for the first time in generations. The decisions made in this room over the next few days would shape their futures for centuries to come. Admiral Kexrun, she said finally, we'll examine your data and consider your proposals. But understand this. Humanity will not simply replace the Empire with another form of authoritarian rule. If we move forward with some kind of galactic federation, it will be based on consent, cooperation, and the right of every species to determine its own destiny. The alien skin shifted to patterns of what seemed like genuine relief. That is all I could hope for, Admiral. The alternative is chaos, and chaos serves no one. As the former Imperial commander was escorted back to his quarters, Lisa turned to her team. They had won the war, but the peace might prove even more challenging than the conquest. Recommendations? She asked. The discussion that followed would reshape the galaxy. 2 weeks after the Empire's surrender, representatives from 47 different species gathered aboard the repaired Dominion's Pride for what would become known as the Freedom Conference. Admiral Lisa Martinez watched from the observation deck as delegates filled the massive council chamber that had once hosted Imperial victory celebrations. The transformation was remarkable. Where Imperial banners had once hung, now flew the flags of liberated worlds. The throne platform had been replaced with a circular arrangement of equal seats. The trophy displays had been removed and replaced with artwork donated by freed civilizations. Emma Foster stood beside her, reviewing the final preparations on her datapad. Her role had evolved from intelligence officer to chief coordinator for the complex negotiations ahead. The task was staggering in its scope and importance. 47 species confirmed, Emma reported. Representatives from 312 star systems. The Andorian delegation alone includes 15 different subspecies that were forcibly integrated under Imperial rule. Ryan Clark was coordinating security with Nina Davis, though the nature of their concerns had shifted dramatically from their original mission. Instead of protecting human diplomats from alien threats, they were now ensuring that centuries of Imperial oppression didn't explode into violence during the delicate transition process. Some of these groups have been fighting each other for generations, Ryan observed quietly. Imperial policy deliberately encouraged conflicts between subject species to prevent unified resistance. Overcoming that conditioning won't happen overnight. Jacob Brown had expanded his engineering focus to include the massive logistical challenges of the conference itself. Providing life support, translation services, and communications for dozens of different species required technical solutions that had never been attempted before. Environmental controls are stable, he reported. Universal translators are functioning at 97.3% accuracy. The few remaining glitches are mostly cultural concepts that don't translate directly between species. Nina was monitoring intelligence reports from throughout former Imperial space. The liberation was proceeding smoothly in most systems, but there were concerning developments in some regions. 3 systems in the Outer Rim have declared independence from everyone, she reported. They're not interested in joining any kind of federation. Several former Imperial governors have set themselves up as local warlords. Lisa nodded grimly. They had anticipated this problem. The Empire's collapse would create power vacuums that not everyone would want to fill with cooperative governance. Admiral Kexran approached their group, moving carefully and keeping his hands visible. His status had evolved from prisoner to advisor, though the exact nature of his role remained undefined. His knowledge of Imperial systems and procedures had proven invaluable during the transition. "Admiral Martinez," he said formally, "the delegates are ready to begin. However, there are some concerns about the proposed structure that you should be aware of." Lisa turned to face him. "What kind of concerns?" The alien's skin shifted to patterns indicating diplomatic caution. "Several species are questioning humanity's role in the new Federation. They appreciate your leadership in the liberation effort, but they worry about exchanging Imperial domination for human hegemony." Emma looked up from her preparations. "We've been very clear that we're not interested in ruling anyone. The whole point of this conference is to create a cooperative structure." "Yes," Kexran agreed, "but humanity currently controls the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Your technology defeated the Empire. Some delegates fear that makes you the de facto rulers regardless of official structures." Ryan frowned. "What are they suggesting?" "Various proposals. Some want guarantees that human military forces will be reduced after the transition. Others suggest that military command should be shared among multiple species. A few are proposing that Earth should give up some of its advanced technology to level the playing field." Lisa considered these concerns carefully. They were not entirely unreasonable. Humanity had revealed capabilities that surprised even their allies. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically, and other species were naturally worried about their place in the new order. "We'll address those concerns directly," she decided. "Let's begin." The council chamber fell silent as Lisa walked to the center of the circular seating arrangement. Dozens of different species focused their attention on her, their expressions ranging from hopeful to suspicious to carefully neutral. "Representatives of the free worlds," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals seeking to build a better future for all our peoples." A delegate from the crystalline Zephyrians raised one arm. "Admiral Martinez, with respect, we are not equals. Humanity possesses military technology that surpasses anything the rest of us have developed. How can we trust that you will not eventually use that advantage to impose your will?" The question hung in the air, and Lisa could see similar concerns reflected in many faces around the chamber. This was the moment that would determine whether the conference succeeded or failed. "A fair question," she acknowledged. "Let me answer with a demonstration." She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of human military forces throughout the galaxy. The scale was impressive. Thousands of ships, advanced weapon systems, and military installations that hadn't existed in Imperial databases. "This represents humanity's current military deployment," she continued. "As you can see, we have sufficient force to control any system we choose." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled delegates. Some species were clearly reconsidering their participation in the conference. "However," Lisa continued, "this display also shows our intended deployment over the next 6 months." The hologram shifted, showing human forces withdrawing to positions around Earth and its immediate neighbors. The vast military presence that had liberated the galaxy was consolidating into a much smaller defensive posture. "Humanity fought this war to protect our people and free enslaved populations," she explained. "We did not fight it to become galactic overlords. We will maintain sufficient forces to defend ourselves and honor our commitments to allies, but we have no interest in occupying other worlds or imposing our government on other species." An Andorian representative stood. "What about your advanced technology? Will humanity share the innovations that defeated the Empire?" Emma stepped forward to field this question. "We are prepared to share defensive technologies and peaceful applications immediately. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, communication systems, energy production methods, anything that improves the quality of life for all species." "What about military technology?" pressed a delegate from one of the insectoid species. Ryan answered this time. "Weapons technology will be shared selectively and only with the consent of the proposed Federation Council. We believe in the right of self-defense, But we also believe in preventing the kind of arms race that could lead to another galactic war. Jacob activated additional displays showing the proposed structure of the new Federation. Technical cooperation will be a cornerstone of the new alliance. Shared research, joint projects, open exchange of scientific knowledge. Humanity brings advanced military technology to the table, but other species bring advantages in biology, chemistry, materials science, and dozens of other fields. Admiral, Kexron spoke from his position among the Imperial representatives. I can confirm that humanity's approach during the transition has been consistent with these promises. They have made no attempt to establish permanent control over former Imperial territory. A delegate from a species Lisa didn't recognize raised what might have been a tentacle. What guarantees do we have that humanity will honor these commitments? The Empire made promises too, before revealing their true nature. The question struck at the heart of the matter. Words and demonstrations were useful, but trust had to be earned over time through consistent actions. You have the guarantee of our actions over the past 2 weeks, Lisa replied. But more importantly, you have the guarantee of shared power. We're not proposing a human-led federation. We're proposing a federation where humanity is one voice among many. Nina activated the final display, showing the proposed governance structure. A council of representatives from all member species, with rotating leadership and decision-making power, distributed based on population, resources, and contribution to common defense. Humanity will have a voice proportional to our population and contribution, Lisa continued, but so will every other member species. No single group will have the power to dominate the others. The chamber fell quiet as delegates absorbed the implications of the proposal. They were being offered something unprecedented in galactic history, a chance to participate in their own governance as equals, rather than subjects. An elderly Corvani delegate slowly stood. In my lifetime, I have seen my people conquered, enslaved, and nearly destroyed. Today you offer us hope for something better. I cannot speak for other species, but the Corvani Federation will join this alliance. One by one, other delegates began to voice their agreement. Not universal approval, but enough consensus to move forward. The foundation of a new galactic order was taking shape. 1 year after the Freedom Conference, Admiral Lisa Martinez stood in the observation lounge of the newly christened Starship Cooperation, watching the construction of Unity Station in the neutral space between former Imperial territory and human colonies. The massive space station would serve as the permanent headquarters for the Galactic Federation, a symbol of the new age they had all worked to create. The past year had not been easy. Integrating hundreds of different species into a functional government required patience, compromise, and occasional enforcement action against groups that preferred the chaos of the power vacuum to the responsibilities of cooperation. But it was working. Emma Foster, now serving as the Federation's Director of Interspecies Relations, joined her at the observation window. Her youthful enthusiasm had matured into the confident competence of someone who had helped shape history. The final vote came in from the Outer Rim territories, Emma reported. The hegemony of independent worlds has agreed to join the Federation. That brings our membership to 523 star systems representing 89 different species. Lisa smiled. The Outer Rim had been the holdouts, systems that had declared independence from everyone after the Empire's fall. It had taken a year of patient diplomacy and demonstrated benefits of Federation membership to convince them that cooperation was preferable to isolation. Ryan Clark approached from the communications station. His role evolved into the Federation's strategic coordinator. His experience with both human military doctrine and alien psychology had proven invaluable in managing the complex security arrangements required to keep the peace. Status report from all sectors, he announced. Trade volume is up 340% compared to Imperial levels. Interspecies conflicts are at their lowest point in recorded history. Military incidents have dropped to essentially zero. The success was remarkable, but Lisa knew it was fragile. The Federation worked because everyone benefited from participation. If those benefits ever disappeared, the old patterns of conflict and domination could return quickly. Jacob Brown materialized beside them. His engineering expertise now focused on the massive infrastructure projects required to support the Federation's goals. His ability to make different technologies work together had become crucial as the Alliance expanded. Unity Station will be fully operational in 6 months, he reported. The Universal Translation System is already handling 847 different languages and dialects. Transportation networks are connecting previously isolated systems. The communication grid will allow real-time consultation between all member worlds. Nina Davis emerged from a security briefing. Her responsibilities expanded to coordinating defense arrangements across multiple species and star systems. Her work had become more about preventing conflicts than winning them, a change that suited humanity's new role perfectly. Intelligence reports from all sectors are clean, she announced. No significant threats to Federation stability. The few remaining Imperial loyalist groups are more interested in finding new homes than causing trouble. Admiral Kexran joined their group, his status now officially recognized as the Federation's historical advisor. His knowledge of Imperial systems and his genuine conversion to cooperative governance had made him an unlikely but valuable ally. The final Imperial archives have been transferred to Federation control, he reported. Complete records of all conquered species, their original territories and their cultural heritage. The restoration projects can now begin in earnest. This was perhaps the Federation's most ambitious goal, not just preventing future conquest, but actively working to undo the damage of past imperialism. Species that had been scattered across the galaxy were being reunited. Lost languages and traditions were being recovered and preserved. Worlds strip-mined by imperial industry were being restored to habitability. Lisa walked to the main display, which showed a real-time map of Federation space. The contrast with the old imperial charts was striking. Instead of a rigid hierarchy centered on the capital world, the map showed a web of connections linking hundreds of worlds in voluntary association. System report, she requested. The display updated to show current statistics across all Federation territory. Population, 847 billion beings across 89 different species. Economic output, exceeding imperial levels despite the elimination of slave labor. Military strength, adequate for defense without the massive offensive capabilities that had made the Empire a threat to its neighbors. Agricultural production is up 23% from imperial levels, Emma noted, reading from her datapad. Medical advances are being shared freely between species. Educational exchange programs are exposing young beings to dozens of different cultures and perspectives. Ryan studied the military statistics. Defense coordination is working smoothly. The joint fleet exercises last month went perfectly. Each species contributes what they do best while learning from the others. The Federation military was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one dominant species imposing its doctrine on everyone else, it was a truly cooperative force that combined the best elements of dozens of different military traditions. Zephyrian shield technology, Vextar mobility systems, human stealth capabilities, Andorian sensors, and Corvani weapon systems all integrated into a defensive network that was far more effective than the sum of its parts. Jacob was reviewing infrastructure reports. The technical integration projects are ahead of schedule. Universal docking standards are being implemented across all systems. Emergency response networks can coordinate rescue operations across species boundaries. The quantum communication grid will eliminate the information delays that plagued the Empire. But perhaps most importantly, Nina's security reports showed something unprecedented in galactic history. Peace was becoming normal. Conflicts between species were being resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Disputes were handled by neutral arbitrators instead of military force. The Federation had created something that had never existed before, a sustainable galactic civilization. Incoming transmission from Earth, announced the ship's communication system. The main display switched to show the familiar blue-white sphere of humanity's homeworld. President Sarah Williams appeared on screen, her expression showing the satisfaction of someone who had watched impossible dreams become reality. Admiral Martinez, the president began, the Global Council has reviewed the Federation's first annual report. We're impressed by what you've accomplished out there. Lisa inclined her head respectfully. Thank you, Madam President. But this success belongs to everyone who chose cooperation over conflict. Agreed, Williams replied, which brings me to the reason for this call. The Federation Council has requested that Earth formally join as a full member, rather than maintaining our current associate status. This was the moment Lisa had been waiting for. Humanity had deliberately remained outside the Federation's formal structure to avoid accusations of domination. But the other species had come to trust human intentions, and they wanted Earth to take its place as an equal partner in the alliance. The Global Council's decision? Lisa asked. President Williams smiled. Unanimous approval. Welcome to the Galactic Federation, Admiral. The celebration that followed was broadcast across Federation space. Hundreds of species marked the moment when humanity officially joined the alliance they had helped create. It was a turning point that marked the final end of the Imperial Age and the beginning of something entirely new. As the festivities continued around her, Lisa found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had come to this star system as fake diplomats planning a military operation. They were leaving as genuine partners in the galaxy's first truly cooperative government. Emma joined her at the observation window again, watching construction work continue on Unity Station. Do you think it will last? She asked quietly. Lisa considered the question seriously. The Federation faced challenges that no government had ever confronted. Managing the needs and interests of dozens of different species across hundreds of star systems required compromises and patience that tested everyone involved. Nothing lasts forever, she replied finally. But I think we've built something worth preserving, and more importantly, we've proven that it's possible. Ryan appeared beside them, his strategic mind already working on future challenges. The real test will come when the first generation born after liberation reaches adulthood. They won't remember the Empire. To them, cooperation will be normal. That's the goal, Nina said, joining the conversation. Create a system so successful that nobody wants to go back to the old ways. Jacob was monitoring the construction progress on his displays. Unity Station will be operational for at least 2 centuries with proper maintenance, long enough for the Federation to become a permanent fixture of galactic civilization. Admiral Kexran spoke last, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed the transition from both sides. I spent my life serving an empire built on the belief that strength came from domination. You have shown us that true strength comes from cooperation. That is a lesson worth preserving. As the cooperation prepared to return to Earth, Lisa took one last look at the construction site where Unity Station was taking shape. In 6 months, representatives for Key,